Hi, welcome to another episode of The Lord's Delight. This podcast episode is very much related to the previous one where we talked about the step of faith, and this, said earlier, is the next side of the coin. This is learning to being still before God. Sometimes He asks us to take a step of faith. Sometimes He asks us to be just still, which is also very hard for us. That is the time we'll want to do something for God. When He asks us to step out in faith, we'll be like, oh Lord, is it you? Is it really happening? We'll have a number of questions and we'll want to hesitate a bit and try to stall taking the step. But the same God, when He says, be still before me, it is very hard to keep still. I'm talking about this from personal experience. So as human beings, we are so fickle that both when God asks us to do, it's hard for us to obey. The first instance from the Bible that I want to talk about is the Israelites being slaves to Egyptians for about 430 years. It says in Exodus chapter 12, the people of Israel had lived in Egypt 430 years. They came as an escape from famine. They all, including Jacob, they all moved to Egypt because God had provided provisions for them through Joseph. But you know what happened? They were slaves in that land for 430 years. They had to be slaves for centuries, and they had been shouting out to the Lord, right? They lost their people and the king wanted to kill all the male babies, and they had to do back-breaking labor for the Egyptian pharaoh, and Moses tried to do something about it earlier on with his own strength. That didn't end up happening, so he ran away. But God had saved Moses for this particular purpose. But until the proper time came, the timing of God, which is the Israelites had to wait 430 years. You ask me why? I have no clue. But they had to be still before God until that time. And then God's mighty hand freed them and took them from that place in an exodus. The thing is, God's power works at any time, but the thing is, He has plans and timing is His biggest strength, I believe, because as humans we are not able to understand the big picture. We only see our lives, and God sees multiples of our lives, right? He sees so many people and there is overlap, and He sees both the big picture and the small picture. So the Israelites had to wait 430 years for a deliverance. The second example is the story of Joseph, a particular instance where Joseph is wrongly accused of sexual assault attempt by Potiphar's wife and is put in prison, and this guy had to wait in prison for such a long time. He even requested, or maybe begged, we don't know, the cupbearer and the baker of the king to remember him when he interpreted their dream, and they promptly forgot. One because he died, the other when he was raised up, put back in a position that he had prior to coming to the prison, he had completely forgotten Joseph. The king had to have a dream that was uninterpretable for the cupbearer to remember Joseph. So God's timing, until that time Joseph was in the prison. And you know what is even more astonishing about this? At least the Egyptians, they grumbled and they whined and they shouted out to God to look at their plight. I'm not saying that's wrong. We do that quite a bit at times, right? Here, Joseph waited patiently. He never says anywhere that he grumbled, talked against God, or murmured. Nothing. This guy waited on God, and that is such a challenging example for us. The third example I would want to give you from my own life. Around 2012, I had a shock of my life. Until that point, I thought, I'll be working as having the job that I had and enjoyed. I was in a different country than I am in now. What ended up happening was I lost my job, and then very differently, God actually enabled me to move back to my home country and then pursue, instead of consultant work, He had helped me get into the academic area. So I was there for almost, I think, 7 years, and again an unexpected shock. I had to leave. now I was thinking I'll be working in the academic area. But what ended up happening, I was back to square one of thinking, oh, maybe I should go back to consultancy. And this happened in mid 2019. So I came back out and told God, this is what I want to do. I want to pursue this exam and I want to go to a different country for higher study, this, that, and everything. But what? God closed the door. And then I tried something else, and it was a very confusing time for me because I did not know which way to go. The only thing I would hear from God was, be still before me. And it was really hard on me because how do you stay still when you're trying to figure out what do you do with your life and you don't want breaks in your resume? But I understand that God knows better, but it's still hard to obey because until that point in my life, it has always been run, do this, do that. And then suddenly when you are with like no income, what to do next, which direction should I pursue, because the life will turn around. And then for the next 2 years, it was such a confusion and uncertainty. But that is because for me, right, because God kept telling me, stay still. From mid 2019 to early 2020, it was a struggle. Then I realized what a protection it was, because guess what? Every single person in this world had to be still. The world shut down because of COVID. And for 2 years, from mid 2019 to now, for these 2 years, God has provided me beautifully good food, security, like awesome place to stay, obviously at home with parents. And He also gave me a blessing which I never asked. He gave me parents who are so spiritual and praying that they were not saying, hey, pushing me into something and saying, do this for now, we'll figure out everything else later, start to earn. They never said that. They were always, we will wait on God and He will open the right door. And that was also such a blessing because they were doing it in prayer. And yes, God has opened a door in mid 2021. But again, I'm at a point where I'm thinking, again I have to move countries, and God has been helping me move countries like as if it is a game. I've lived in so many different countries. I'm like, God is again asking me to uproot myself and move somewhere else. But guess what? Again, there was like this big shutdown, lockdown in my country, and the visa processing and everything was at an uncertainty. But I am so sure God will guide me the way I need to go. And there is no anxiety about it. This is the main point. Whether God is asking you to step out in faith or He's asking you to be still, as long as we give that worries to Him, you will have such peace that people around you will think what's wrong with you if they are not in faith. Because I see online and the consulate is getting bombarded and blasted by the people who are like, how can you do this to me? How can you cancel the visa interviews? I need to go here. My career is dependent on it. My life is dependent on it. But you know what? Whether my appointment still holds true or if it gets cancelled, I know my God will provide for me. Somehow He will guide me in the way He has for me, and I have completely surrendered that to Him. And I am not going to worry or be anxious about it because He is my God. And doesn't matter if He is going to open up a path through the Jordan or if He is going to ask me to be still and hold on for a few more months or even a year. I am not sure, but you know what? I will obey because I have seen His hand guide me through all the storms in my life, and I've realized the past 2 years of stillness was for my own protection. If I had gone to another country earlier, I would have been in a dire situation, caught somewhere where I'm not home with online classes, no payment, and still had to pay rent and whatnot, right? So His protection has been with me for the past 2 years, and He's not a God who is going to discard me now. He will not abandon us. He says that in the Bible, I will not forsake you or leave you, and He will uphold me with His righteous right hand. So this is the takeaway. Whether He's asking you to step out in faith or if He's asking you to hold still, obey. And if you have questions, confusions, fears, just tell it all to Him, and He will give you the peace that will just befuddle everybody, because that peace guards our heart and our mind in Christ Jesus amidst all the storms of life. I'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.